What if everyone was invisible?
When I looked at this question, I sort of, in a throwback to the way we started this podcast, thought about how people would, use this to do some crime. Because not being seen is a pretty important part of crime, in case you didn't know.
Important part of successful crime.
Yes.
Like, you can do shitty crimes and get caught every time. You don't need to hide at all.
You're right. Successful crime, yes, involves generally not being seen. Which is obviously much simpler if you can't be seen. So really sort of the main one that I sort of focused on, because it was the funniest, was just sort of theft / like breaking and entering type stuff, which is really funny in this scenario, because basically what that entails is just like going inside the place and then just like standing next to a wall until it closes.
Oh yeah.
And you just kind of hang out. And this is where we get to a really fun, sort of side part of this, which is that one of the things we didn't really establish as a podcasting unit, coming into this, was whether or not your clothes were also invisible. There's obviously, pros and cons of each direction of that. But I think it's actually really funny to me if your clothes are not invisible, because then everyone doing this just has to be naked. It's just like a naked dude pressed against the wall and hoping no one runs into him for many reasons.
It's just like, so now no matter what crimes you commit, not only are you a criminal, you're also a pervert.
Well, but here's the thing, actually, that I thought about. So indecent exposure doesn't exist anymore, right?
Oh, get away with it.
It's one less crime you can commit.
Yeah.
We have reduced the amount of crimes.
You don't have to worry about that one. But obviously, for say like a bank, you're going to want to make sure that people aren't just creeping out by your walls, whether or not they are clothed at the end of the day. So I had to kind of figure out how you would do this. And fortunately, most of the answers are actually very funny. Literally, the first one I thought of was you just get your security guards some really just like long poles, and they just kind of walk around waving those around and see if they hit anybody. Which is great. It's just a great mental image. Whether or not they find anyone, both are very funny. But that one's kind of a little dangerous because you have to figure that, most of the time someone won't try to break in or anything, and the guards are going to get bored, and, they won't be quite as vigorous in their pole swinging, and people will slip through the cracks. That's not a great, long-term solution. The next one I thought of was basically just once you close up, you just sort of flood the room with dust or flour or something.
Tear gas the place?
No, not like tear gas. Don't drive them out, but
so they leave
the idea,
footprints and stuff.
Yeah, but I mean, in theory, it'll still adhere to them, so you will be able to see them
see their outline
as a dust person, and maybe they breathe it in and
someone has to clean it up every morning.
Exactly. So that's also not a great solution, overall. It is once again very funny, but yeah, not the best solution. So really, what we need is something that is sort of a passive thing. It doesn't require someone actually actively checking as vigorously as they did with the polls. But it isn't really, intrusive like the nightly flower bath is. And that's when I came up with the perfect solution, which is just really long 70s style shag carpet. Because if someone is standing there, you'll see their footprints. It's perfect. It's foolproof. I think you probably also have the poles just to check out things from
just
a distance.
Case.
But
yeah,
that's way
it does lose to a railing that you can sit on.
Right. So you gotta grease up your railings too, I guess.
Or just hit people with a pole. You don't have to grease everything.
But I mean, you got your, I think that's probably your a nice unobtrusive way to sort of keep an eye on if someone is hanging out. The other one that exists obviously is just thermal cameras, but that's really boring.
Yeah.
So I mean that's an option, I guess, but shag carpets, it just deserves a comeback anyway, right? It's time. Come on.
It's about time it came back.
So that's sort of the ways you can sort of mitigate people sneaking around like that. One other interesting thing is that really right now security revolves around the idea that if you do something, we will catch you on camera and be able to identify you. But that's not really a thing anymore. Cameras don't really work. Once again, there's thermal cameras, but you can't actually identify someone based on a thermal camera.
You can't see someone's face.
Right, yeah. So I think the strategy in like a bank security situation has to change to traps.
Like Home Alone style.
Right. I don't know exactly. I couldn't think of like Home Alone style was basically as far as I got, which was once again very funny. But I didn't go too in depth on that because I mean you can like, I don't know, trap doors and shit. I don't know, whatever. But I get that sort of, strategy wise, that's how it kind of has to go, is into more of a someone gets in and we're just gonna keep them here, until someone can come and like collect them and possibly also douse them in flour to keep a hold of them, and because it's funny.
You and the flour.
It's just a really funny mental image when you have an invisible person covered in flour. I don't know.
Everyone should just have flour in their pockets so you can throw it at people.
That would be great.
Pocket flour.
I like that idea a lot, actually. So from there, sort of not directly related, but we sort of I looked into identification. If you want to segue, I guess, like, oh, someone's been caught. How do you prove that it's actually them? I don't know, whatever. But we just have to talk about identification because obviously photo IDs don't really work anymore, guys. Everyone's looks pretty much the same. It's a blue square.
Everyone looks like no one.
Yep. So we need some other way to, actually ID people for all of the various ways we, use ID now. And actually this wound up not being as big of a deal as I expected. So probably the biggest one is that obviously fingerprints still work.
Those are pretty good.
And like one of the things I wasn't sure about is a fingerprint scanner still work, but they do because they're capacitive, not optical. So
oh, cool.
So yeah, that still work. And actually, fun fact that I learned in the process of doing this, the like spy movie trick where someone like cuts off someone's hand or finger and uses that to like open a fingerprint scanner.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Apparently now we also have, in addition to like capacitive, and there are optical scanners as well, but usually it's capacitive now. There's also radio frequency ones that actually, instead of scanning the surface like dead layer of skin, they actually scan the living tissue a couple layers beneath that, and that would fail if it was actually a dead finger, which is cool. Apparently, like the iPhone fingerprint scanner uses both capacitive and RF, which is kind of cool. So
that seems like even
overkill for iPhone.
So I think
like overkill for any even from a bank. Like I don't expect someone to actually cut somebody's thumb off to trick a fingerprint scanner.
To be clear, it's not just to stop the dead man's finger. Yeah.
You could also just do like voice authentication along with it or something. Like it doesn't have to be.
The idea is that using the RF as well. The big thing it gets around if someone has like a cut on their finger or something. If that's just surface level, the RF will still work, and it just gets you more data to make it an easier match. But then yes, also voice ID. So I was wondering about voice ID because I never really knew at like modern voice ID how it handled like people being sick and stuff. Because I didn't want to say use voice ID as your like method of identification like for the world if getting a cold meant that you couldn't like use an ATM or anything. But apparently modern voice ID is actually like really, really robust. It uses like accent, cadence, pronunciation, and like your mouth and breathing sounds and everything.
I mean, would you be able to like mimic someone if you like really
apparently
tried?
Does Robin Williams just have the gambit of like identity theft?
So apparently there's actually, I found an article talking about, there was a bank in the UK that was switching over to having voice and fingerprint authentication available. And apparently there's like 100 different factors that go into the voice ID they use. And it's basically, so many of them are like entirely subconscious things about like the way that your mouth and throat work that you couldn't fool them with mimicry apparently. Which is pretty cool. I did not know that.
I think the parrot trick would still work though.
I don't think the parrot trick would work. Parrots don't sound like people. That's not how that works.
I think it's how parrots work. I have played video games before, Ben, and many of them end with just you killing them and there's a parrot left over and use them to trick the voice activation.
Okay, when you say many of them, can you name literally one of those?
I actually was just playing Pokemon Heart Gold and that happens in that one.
God damn it. Nintendo. All right. Anyway. So just quickly sort of to wrap up, a lot of there are other like biometrics as well that people use. Most of them won't work because a lot of them are optical, which not going to work. Can't see yourself. So the one that would that's kind of cool is apparently heart rate recognition is a thing that people have like distinct beat patterns to their heartbeat.
Really? Like every single person has a different one?
Apparently it's obviously it's not as reliable as like voice or fingerprints are. And obviously it's, it can be affected by like stress or things like that. So it's obviously not a good like day-to-day system, but I figure in a situation where you like need to be 100% sure the person is the person, you would have that as well as an option as like a third level, And then for the best actual just like daily system, it's actually kind of boring. I think basically what it comes down to is that you have like a government database of people's voice IDs and fingerprint IDs. And then there's like a smartphone app that hooks into that so you can prove that you're you or that people are other people. That's kind of it. It's not as exciting, but I think it would actually work. So that's...
And everyone has flour in their pockets.
Right, and everyone has flour in their pockets just in case. And honestly, having something that's not that exciting but actually works is a pretty big step forward for this podcast. So...
Or step backwards, just to entertain people.
I mean, I had like the walking around with poles and stuff,
poles.
and I thought that was pretty good.
You had some stuff.